Hello, and welcome to another ED webinar. I'm Adam. I'm one of the lead instructional designers here at ED. And in today's webinar, we're just going to take you through, we're looking at more structure of lessons, like how to make a good micro lesson, what pieces bring it together. So we're not going to be looking too much at the actual use of the authoring tool. You'll see it a bit, but we're not going to be going too in depth. If you're interested in that, I suggest checking out some of the past webinars we have hosted on YouTube. But of course, you can also ask a question during the webinar, even if it's not to do with how to structure lessons, if it's about how to use a particular template or any other questions you might have, how to invite users, that sort of thing. And let me know, and I'll answer those when we get to the end of the webinar. So to start us off here, I'm just going to be talking about this the structure to a lesson. I mean, that's what we're looking at in this webinar. So there are some key points that you need to consider when making your lesson, and I guess we'll cover all of these. And it's introduce your lesson, use some knowledge transfer, reinforce your learners with interactive templates, apply some gamification, and trying to keep your lesson short. And those are kind of the topics that we'll cover during this webinar. As an example lesson, I'm just going to go through one of these demo lessons that we have available. And these, you can actually log into the app and view these in the demo account that's available in every app. If you want to have a look, there's this introduction to the MacBook lesson there, as well as some others, just to give you a feel of how ED lessons work. So when you're writing a lesson, it's always great to start just by introducing the top of your lesson to the learner. So what that will do is it will prime your learners as to what they're going to learn in the lesson. It gets them ready for learning. Let's say we were talking about some sales skills, like specific scripts you wanted your employees to use when they're talking about a product. Then you tell them at the start of the lesson. It gets them in the right frame of mind. It gets them thinking about what they know of the topic already. And it's better than just jumping straight into educating them. And it doesn't have to be too long. Like here, we've just a couple of sentences, and that's how you want to be starting your lessons. So I've used a text and images template just because I like to include images in lessons. I think it makes it a bit more interesting for learners, and I just personally like doing the sort of design half of lessons, or the imagery and stuff. I have a lot of fun with that. Anyway, I'm sure you all have your own style. So just to show you some of the other templates, so we've got text and images here, and I'm going to open the template library to the content tab just to show you some of the other templates you can use to introduce your lesson. So as we scroll down here, one of the most popular templates for introducing content is of course the title slide. So this comes with every lesson. And it's as simple as typing in the title of your lesson, the description. If you're in you're short for time, you can even take the title and description, just take it from the title that you have to give your lesson when you create it, put a description in there, and bring it into your title slide. It's nice and quick, easy to do, and it's better for your learners. So another one of the templates you can actually use, and this is probably my personal favorite template in the library. So if you haven't tried it out yet, I recommend bringing it in. And this is the image gallery template. Honestly, there's probably one of these in every other of my lessons. So the way you can use this, typically this is used to just give us some information. You're swiping through, you're seeing some images, some text. You can actually use this to introduce your lesson too. If you remove every section so there's only down to one, here you've got a nice image to put the learner, visually, to let them see what they're going to be learning about. And then also giving it a caption, just say again, oh, welcome to this lesson. Here you'll be learning about the MacBook and what it means to sell it, for example. So that's the first part of creating a good lesson. You introduce it. Very simple. So the next part of a good lesson, a good standard lesson, is to use some knowledge transfer. So there's a huge number of ways to do that. For me, in this example lesson, we've taken a YouTube video, but you can use your own video, you can upload a video, you can use a Vimeo video if you have that to hand. But also, we've got a number of content templates that we have available here, such as, let's see, we already looked at text and images, and I would just like to bring in, as an example, to show you another content template that's nice and high level. We've talked about how image gallery I recommend that being in most of your lessons if you haven't tried it yet. Expandable lists is also another great way to show some do some knowledge transfer, and I'll show you why. So let's say you want to bullet point out some key messages. Let's say we're talking about open questions, why they're good, what makes them good. So you can actually segment off. You tap here, and you get some more information. So when the learner first arrives on the slide, they see a very top-level list of information, like the bullet point summary of why open questions are good. So here you can see, just at the very top level, when the learner arrives, like I said, they see straight away, they get the bullet point answers, or the very quick summary, and we're all about micro quick summaries in this platform, and then they can tap in and get more information about that. So that's a great way to introduce some knowledge transfer there alongside your video. So when you're on the knowledge transfer section of the lesson, this is when you first got to start thinking about the final point, and honestly, we're going to weave it in throughout the whole lesson creation, and that's making sure your lessons aren't too long. So something that a lot of people, I see a lot of people doing, a common mistake when you first get into authoring lessons in Ed, is that they'll do 5 or 6 content templates in a row. It'll be wall-to-wall text in a scrollable. There'll be no images or nothing, and it's a lot to go through. And what we like to do, we're all about micro lessons, we're about micro learning, and that's the future, to be honest. I assume that's why you're all here watching this. So yeah, we want to focus on trying to give a more micro, manageable lessons to learners. So if you find yourself, let's say you've taken maybe 3 or 4 content templates in a row from this tab. You've got some image in there, you've got a lot of text, you've got a video, you've got more text. You should really be starting to think about, certainly you should try and break that up with some interactive templates, which we'll look at in a moment, just to keep the learner awake as they're going through all this text, all this knowledge transfer. But also you can think about maybe splitting it up into a couple of different lessons. If it's going on for too long, is it possible to have just one topic in this lesson? Just try and focus it down onto one topic. And these directed, focused lessons are really successful, and it's worth thinking about. You can put all the information in there you want, but if it's not exactly what the learner needs, if there's some frivolous information in there, then it's going to be taking away from what they're supposed to actually be learning, and it's going to be distracting them, and it's going to be using their time, which obviously you don't want to use up their time if it's not required. Anyway, so that was just our first little bit on using, keeping your lessons short. So to recap quickly, we have introduced our lesson to the learner, and then we've given them some knowledge transfer. So those are 2 key elements. And then we're going to look at immediately reinforcing the content. So I'm going to start here just by showing you a quick interactive template and why it's useful to immediately reinforce. So to show you how it works, let's say a learner has gotten onto this slide and they're being told about the MacBook battery life, and they can't quite remember it correctly. They think it's got an 8-hour battery life. They press OK, and they get immediately reinforced that that's not the correct answer. They get told straight away, you're wrong. Basically, their misconceptions are corrected, and that's very useful to have so close to the time they learnt it, because we're not giving them any time to sort of take in any wrong messages, because once they're in there, it's awfully hard to forget, awfully hard to correct. So something else you'll notice, as well as Ed automatically telling them whether they got it right or wrong, is also the takeaway here. This is the pop-up that appears called the takeaway. So a good takeaway reinforces the correct answer, because let's say we tell them, I don't know, the learner comes here and they say 8, they press OK, and we didn't have a takeaway. Well, all they know is that it's wrong. They don't know whether it was 9 or 10 hours. So we like to have a nice takeaway. The first line of a good takeaway always has the correct answer in it. The next thing you should have is it's just something to elaborate on the correct answer, like why it's important for them to learn, why they needed to know that the MacBook had a 9-hour battery life in this example, or it could be why they need to know what a open question is, what a closed question is, that sort of thing. So keep that in mind when you're doing interactive questions. Always try and have a takeaway. Always try and have a takeaway. That's something that you have to get stuck in your head when you're doing interactive. In this example, I've got 3 interactive questions. And just like with content templates, you want to keep it a little bit short. I aim for about 3 to 4 interactive questions a lesson. And, if you're seeing you've got maybe 5 or 6 in there, a lot of questions, then it might be time for you to start thinking maybe this lesson could be split into 2. If there's so much content that you need to reinforce in your learner, you're having to ask all these questions, it could be that you've just not got a very micro lesson there. You've got quite a long lesson that could do with being in 2 parts. And another benefit of having a shorter, more targeted reinforcement is that the learner, you can actually cover all topics. For example, going back to the scenario where someone is putting in 5 or 6 interactive templates, they've got so much text, 5 or 6 content templates, they've got so much text in there, they get around to having a couple of interactive questions, but they don't touch on everything. So again, it's not so good because not everything's being reinforced. And this is, again, where you want to be trying to split your lessons into micro lessons just so that you can reinforce every topic you touch on. And again, immediately, not like, the learner, they sit through a 20-minute video, then they do reading for 10 minutes, and then they're being asked about something they learned half an hour ago. It's not as effective as having that question straight away when they've read it like 10 seconds ago. So that's another reason to keep them short. So another way you can reinforce this content immediately is by using the game templates. So just like with Ed's interactive templates, we've got game templates. They're available in the library. So in this example, we've got the true or false template. And just like how one of my favorite content templates, knowledge transfer templates, is the image gallery. My favorite game template is absolutely the true or false template. And if you're stuck or if you've never tried configuring a game, do true or false. It's totally simple. It can be applied to absolutely any situation. I use it quite a lot when I'm doing an introductory lesson to a course, just because it's a nice, fun way to get the learners on board to the topic. It's sort of a kind of fun, relaxing way to ease themselves in, and they can immediately try again. So let me just show you how the game works, so that we're on the same page. So in this scenario, the learner's having to swipe statements left or right, depending on whether they should say them to the customer when they're talking about the MacBook or shouldn't say them. And I guess the aim is here that we've configured some statements that actually are useful for selling. So we're trying to train them on sales scripts. And as you can see here, they earn points for playing well, and they lose points for getting incorrect answers. They get points for getting correct answers. And it's just another way to reinforce the correct answers, which you've just been going through in the knowledge transfer. So another cool part of the game, which you'll be seeing here, is the stars. And the stars are a really cool bit of gamification that we have in Ed. And you don't have to just apply them to game templates, but we'll just talk about them in game templates at the moment. So in fact, let me go through and just show you on some other templates here, configuring the stars. So you can see here on every interactive template, we have a star reward section, the number of stars rewarded for a correct answer. And you can put any number in there. I like to kind of spread out, maybe give 5 stars a lesson, for example, but as you want, depending on your question. For example, this one is a kind of a hard question. You have to answer 3 different ways. If the learner gets it right, then they've earned 3 stars. They're effectively answering 3 questions. Anyway, as the learner goes through the lesson, they can see if there's a star available. If they get the question right, they're rewarded stars. At the end of the lesson, when they exit, they're kind of scored, and they're shown how many stars they earned and how many stars they could have earned. And this is also this information is constantly available to them once they've gone through a lesson. As they're scrolling through the lessons in the app, they can see, oh, there's 2 stars left available in this lesson, there's 5 in this one. And especially for the completionist learners out there, they're enticed into completing the lesson again. And that's exactly the kind of behavior you want. So it's especially if you're using prizing, if you're one of the people who have set up a prize draw, then the learners really, they're scrolling through and they see some content which in no other e-learning system would they be going in and voluntarily completing lessons again. But with the use of stars, with the encouragement of prizing available, learners see there are stars available and they're hopping back into their lessons, doing them again to earn their stars, and all the while being reinforced on their content, which is exactly what you want. So the 4th step in creating a good micro lesson is applying gamification. So just like you see there on every interactive template, you've got a star reward count down here, and you set how many stars the learner receives for answering that question correctly. And be generous. I've seen some people, they do a massive 20-slide lesson. There's a game at the end which has 1 star available. They're costing you nothing. It's a number to write in the box. Be generous. So that's the 4th step. That's adding gamification. So just to reiterate what we've covered so far, we've talked about introducing learners to the topic of the lesson on the first slide. We've talked about adding some knowledge transfer in the form of either a video or text or both. And we've talked about adding some immediate reinforcement using some of Ed's interactive templates or game templates. And we talked about applying gamification. So the final key thing to keep in mind is to not make your lessons too long. So we've touched on it a couple of times, but I just want to really talk about, I guess, how you can do that. It's all well and good me saying, oh, don't make your lessons too long. If you're sitting in a 20-slide lesson and you don't know what to do, then, well, we're here to help you now. This is, we'll talk about that now. So the first thing to do is plan out your course. And when I'm planning a course, I like to bullet point out the key messages that I want to give out in that course. So let's say I'm talking about open questions. What are my key points? Well, first of all, I want to introduce the topic as a whole. The types of questions to use retailers. That's my first key bullet point. Is the key message is just a broad understanding of open versus closed questions. Then my next one is, what are open questions, or open questions are this. My next key bullet point would be open questions are good because of this reason. Then it would be when to use closed questions, just all examples. And then perhaps a final lesson would be review. And unless I've counted incorrectly, that's 5 bullet points, and that's a nice week-long worth of lessons. So each key bullet point becomes a lesson. And once you've kind of got that idea in your head that each lesson should be focused around one key bullet point, you can get some really good, high-quality, targeted lessons. And you can make sure that your lesson content, it's not bloated, it's not got too much in there. As long as your whole lesson is about reinforcing the key message that you've bullet pointed that it would be talking about, then you're kind of naturally going to go towards shorter lessons. And if you're writing your lesson and you think, even perhaps I've got a whole 2 or 3 journal articles on the use of open questions, I'm never going to fit it in 9 slides. Well, that's okay. You can very simply make your lesson a part 1 and then do part 2 in another lesson. And that just means, again, that the content is nice and manageable. It's palatable. It's not something where the learner goes in, they see 22 slides in the top right corner, and think, oh, good Lord, what have I got myself into? It means, it's a lot better for them. In longer lessons, when lessons are lasting upwards longer than 5 minutes, when you see the size of long lessons, you can see some drop off as learners go through, which is inevitable, really. When we're talking about the sort of the smartphone age, the millennial age, then they don't want to sit through a long lesson. They don't. What can we do? So the only thing that you would change if you're doing a part 1 and a part 2 instead of introducing your learners to the topic of the lesson in the first slide, well, you just reiterate what you learned in the last lesson, what happened last time, a brief recap. Something else to think about when you're trying to construct a shorter lesson, or at least trying to construct a micro lesson. I mentioned before having maybe 3 to 4 interactive templates, but you can also obviously in this example, just to show you how a game works, I've included a game here, but quite a lot of the time I will do a lesson which has no interactive templates and just a game. And we've got some really, really great, really applicable game templates that can be used in so many different scenarios. Image word match, I use that all the time. Memory, that's a great one too. And true or false. These should be your go-tos for when you're trying to think of a game template to use in your lesson. And again, particularly for when you're introducing the topic of a course, or when in the last lesson of a course you're reviewing the content, you'll want to use game templates in there just for the whole lesson. You've got some introduction, some knowledge transfer, and a game, and that makes a fantastic lesson, a nice, easy, relaxing way to bring your learners into the course and to draw them out. And that's more than enough for a micro lesson. And especially, you can set the timer for your game down here, so you know exactly how long they'll be spending in there. So that wraps up the whole structure of a lesson. And I know we briefly talked about structuring a course, but that is important when you're writing a micro lesson format, obviously. So I'm just going to reiterate here. We introduce learners to the topic of the lesson. We then do some knowledge transfer. We then use some interactive templates to reinforce the knowledge we just taught them, or a game, or both. And we then apply some gamification in the form of stars. And we're always keeping in mind as we go through, just trying to keep it nice and micro, not too long. And to have the backup plan, if it does get too long, we can just split it into 2 lessons, and that'll be okay. So all this information is actually on the ED blog. There was a fantastic post, and I will put it in the chat when I find it. But the ED blog, it's constantly got lots of different information. I strongly suggest you follow it because it has information about our new templates, about new features that we release. We just posted one up about our SCORM compliance. So I highly recommend you check it out. But in this blog article in particular, we cover a lot of the information I've talked about in this webinar. So I'll put it in there in the chat so that you can have a look at that when you're creating your own micro lessons. And I'll also post up a link to the ED Academy, because this is a bit of a resource. It's a bit more in-depth than the blog. The blog gives a nice overview of what we're doing at ED, or what we're working on. The Academy goes into more in-depth into how to use specific templates, which obviously I didn't really go into here, but it's all up here. And of course, if you have any questions, please let me know now. I'd be really happy to talk you through anything you need some help with, but also you can contact me on the email adam@edapp.com. And any questions you have, anything you want to know, if it's about structuring your lessons, or maybe you want some advice into how you think you would structure your lesson, some of your content you want to show me and I'll get it once over, please let me know.